Hey guys, tonight we're covering one of those quiet questions that might drift through your mind as you settle in for the evening. Did medieval people drink water? We're going to explore the gentle rhythms of medieval life, the sources of water that sustained entire villages, and the thoughtful choices people made about what to drink each day. We'll wander through misty morning villages, peek into the daily routines of monks and nobles, and discover how our ancestors navigated their world with simple wisdom passed down through generations. So, let's get started. Picture, if you will, a medieval village as the first pale light of dawn creeps across the thatched rooftops. The morning mist clings to the wooden homes like a soft blanket, reluctant to lift. Somewhere in the distance, a dog stretches and yawns, its tail thumping lazily against a doorframe. The air is cool and still, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke from banked hearth fires that have burned low through the night. One by one, the villagers begin to stir. A shutter creaks open here, a door softly closes there. Footsteps pad along the packed earth paths, and soon you can hear the gentle rhythm of daily life beginning. Wooden buckets knock softly against door frames as people emerge, rubbing sleep from their eyes and gathering what they need for the day ahead. The heart of the village is the shared well, a simple stone circle where generations have come to draw water. This morning, like countless mornings before, the villagers make their way there with unhurried steps. The rope creaks as buckets are lowered into the dark depths below. There's something peaceful about these moments. The quiet conversations, the patient waiting as each person takes their turn, the distant sound of church bells marking the hours. Children trail behind their parents, still drowsy, watching the ritual of water gathering with curious eyes. A bucket emerges from the well, dripping and full, and the water catches the early light like scattered diamonds. The sounds are gentle and familiar. The splash of water, the soft thud of buckets being set down, the murmur of neighbors greeting each other as they begin another day. In those quieter times, water came from several peaceful sources that dotted the medieval landscape. Wells were perhaps the most common, dug deep into the earth where underground streams ran clear and cool. Some wells were private, serving a single household or farm, while others, like the one in our village, belonged to the entire community. These wells were treasured and maintained with care, for they were the lifeline of daily existence. Rivers and streams wound their way through the countryside, offering another source of the precious liquid. Some flowed swift and clear from mountain springs, while others moved more slowly through meadows and fields. The villagers knew their local waterways intimately, which stretches ran clearest, which bends offered the sweetest taste, which seasons brought the most dependable flow. Springs were particularly valued, bubbling up from deep in the earth with water that seemed to possess an almost magical purity. These natural fountains were often considered special places, sometimes blessed by local priests or marked with simple stone crosses. Families would make pilgrimages to especially renowned springs, carrying jugs and vessels to take the precious water home. Rain barrels stood beside many homes, their wooden staves swollen tight to catch the gift of water that fell from heaven itself. During dry spells, these barrels became precious resources, their contents carefully rationed and used for the most essential needs. Some households developed ingenious systems of gutters and channels to direct every drop of rainfall into their waiting containers. Not all water was the same, of course. The villagers learned through patient observation which sources worked best for their families. Some water was crystal clear, reflecting the sky like a mirror. Other sources might appear cloudy or carry the taste of earth and minerals. Through generations of experience, people developed an intuitive understanding of their local water sources, passing down knowledge from parent to child like a treasured inheritance. Back then, people noticed that some water didn't make them feel good. It wasn't about tiny creatures they couldn't see. The concept of germs wouldn't emerge for many centuries yet. Instead, medieval people relied on their senses and their experience. They observed that certain sources of water, while appearing clean, sometimes left them feeling unwell in ways they couldn't quite explain. This led to a natural caution, a gentle wisdom born of practical experience. If a particular well or stream seemed to cause discomfort, families would remember and choose alternatives. It was a simple matter of paying attention to what worked and what didn't, without the need for complex theories or scientific explanations. Some medieval thinkers believed that water needed to be changed or balanced in some way before it was fully suitable for drinking. This wasn't superstition, but rather an early form of food safety born from careful observation. They noticed that water left standing too long in certain containers might develop an unpleasant taste or smell. They observed that water from some sources seemed more reliable than others. This careful attention to water quality was really a form of curiosity and learning. Medieval people were constantly experimenting with ways to improve their daily lives, and water preparation was no exception. They tried different storage methods, various filtering techniques using cloth or sand, and different ways of preparing water for consumption. The result was a culture that approached water consumption thoughtfully rather than carelessly. It wasn't fear that guided them, but prudence, a gentle wisdom that valued health and well-being above convenience. Rather than relying solely on plain water, herbal infusions were another popular choice, especially during certain seasons when fresh herbs were abundant. Mint leaves might be steeped in warm water to create a soothing drink, or elderflower blossoms could be gathered to make a delicate, floral tea. These weren't elaborate ceremonies, but simple, everyday practices that added variety and comfort to daily life. People also enjoyed diluted wine or fruit juices, particularly when grapes or apples were in season. These drinks were often mixed with water in various proportions, creating beverages that were both refreshing and, in their minds, more balanced than plain water alone. The act of preparation itself, the mixing, the tasting, the adjusting of flavors, became part of the gentle rhythm of medieval domestic life. It was part of daily life, much like how we choose filtered water today. Medieval people weren't making complex calculations about safety or nutrition. They were simply following practices that felt right, that had been passed down through their families, and that seemed to support their health and well-being. The experience of water varied considerably depending on where one lived. In bustling medieval towns, where many families might share common wells or draw from the same streams, the water could sometimes appear cloudy or develop an earthy taste from heavy use. Town dwellers learned to be particularly careful about their water sources, often developing relationships with specific wells or springs that they trusted. Urban water was also more likely to be shared by many people and animals, which meant that town folk had to be especially thoughtful about when and where they gathered their daily supply. Early morning was often preferred, when the water had rested overnight and settled clear. Some towns began to develop simple systems of public fountains or designated water gathering areas to help organize this essential daily activity. In the countryside, families often had more options available to them. A farmhouse might have its own well, or access to a clear stream that ran only through their land. Country dwellers frequently used natural springs that bubbled up in meadows or forests, sources that felt particularly pure and trustworthy. The connection to nature was more direct, and the water often reflected this closeness to the earth. Rural families also made extensive use of rain barrels and storage jars, developing sophisticated systems for capturing and preserving rainwater. These containers were carefully maintained, cleaned regularly, and positioned to catch the maximum amount of precipitation during the rainy seasons. Some households had multiple barrels, allowing them to rotate their water supply and always have fresh reserves available. The rhythm of water gathering in the country was often more leisurely and contemplative than in town. A walk to the spring might take you through quiet woods or across peaceful meadows. The journey itself became part of the daily meditation, a quiet time to think and observe the changing seasons. Medieval understanding of health was built around the ancient theory of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, each associated with different qualities and temperaments. Within this gentle framework, water was considered fundamentally cold and wet in nature. This wasn't a criticism of water, but simply how it fit into their understanding of natural balance. Some people, particularly those who considered themselves to have naturally cold constitutions, preferred to balance their water intake with warmer drinks. They might choose diluted wine, which was thought to possess warming properties, or broths and soups that combined water with heating spices and ingredients. This wasn't about avoiding water entirely, but about creating what they believed to be a harmonious balance within their bodies. Herbal preparations were often chosen specifically to complement or modify water's natural properties. A person feeling particularly sluggish might add warming herbs like ginger or cinnamon to their water, while someone feeling overheated might choose cooling additions like mint or rose petals. These practices reflected a thoughtful, individualized approach to daily health maintenance. The concept of balance extended beyond just temperature. Medieval people believed that different activities, seasons, and life stages called for different approaches to drinking and eating. An elderly person might prefer warm, diluted wine, while a young, active person might be more inclined toward clear water or light alish. Pregnant women, laborers, and scholars might each have different preferences based on their perceived needs. People simply followed what they believed worked best for their individual circumstances and constitution. There was no single right way to approach hydration, but rather a flexible system that could be adapted to personal experience and seasonal changes that in the grand manor houses and stone castles that dotted the medieval landscape. The approach to water was somewhat different from that of ordinary villagers. Nobles and wealthy merchants had the resources to create more elaborate systems for ensuring their water supply remained fresh and dependable. Private wells were common in these households, often dug deeper and maintained more carefully than community wells. Castle courtyards frequently featured beautifully crafted stone wells, sometimes covered with intricate metalwork or wooden canopies to protect the water from leaves and debris. These wells were often the pride of the household, representing not just practicality, but also status and careful stewardship. The water from such sources was typically reserved for the lord's family and honored guests. Servants in wealthy households developed their own gentle techniques for improving water quality. They might filter water through layers of clean cloth, removing any visible particles or sediment. Some households used simple sand filters, layering clean sand in large ceramic vessels and allowing water to slowly seep through, emerging clearer. On the other side, the wealthy also had access to water from specially chosen sources. A castle might maintain rights to a particular spring known for its exceptional clarity, sending servants on regular journeys to collect this prized water in sealed containers. Some noble families even had water transported from distant springs. Renowned throughout the region for their supposed healing properties, storage was another area where wealth made a difference. Instead of simple wooden buckets, wealthy households might use glazed ceramic vessels, silver-lined containers, or specially crafted stone basins that were believed to keep water fresher for longer periods. These containers were often kept in cool, dedicated rooms where temperature and cleanliness could be carefully maintained. Monasteries represented something unique in the medieval world, communities dedicated to order, routine, and thoughtful living. This philosophy extended naturally to their approach to water and daily sustenance. Monks brought a particular mindfulness to all aspects of their material life, including how they gathered, stored, and consumed water. Many monasteries developed ingenious systems for collecting and channeling water. Simple wooden or stone pipes might direct spring water directly into the monastery grounds. Rainwater collection was often elevated to an art form, with carefully designed roof systems and gutters that captured every precious drop and directed it into storage cisterns or reservoirs. The monastic emphasis on cleanliness extended to their water handling practices. Monks typically designated specific brothers to oversee water collection and storage, treating these duties as sacred responsibilities. Water containers were cleaned regularly according to established schedules, and the sources themselves were maintained with almost reverential care. Brewing was indeed a major activity in most monasteries, and this work was approached with the same methodical dedication that characterized all monastic endeavors. The brewing of alesh wasn't seen as indulgent, but as a practical necessity for maintaining the health of the community. Monks developed sophisticated techniques for controlling fermentation, creating beverages that were both nourishing and reliable. The monastic day was structured around regular prayer times, and this rhythm influenced their approach to all daily activities, including drinking. Meals and refreshment breaks occurred at specific times, creating a natural pattern of hydration that supported both physical health and spiritual discipline. They focused on order, routine, and gentle practices that honored both body and soul. Some monasteries became renowned throughout their regions for the quality of their water or their brewing expertise. Pilgrims and travelers often sought out these communities, knowing they could find clean, safe refreshment along with spiritual guidance. Children in medieval times shared largely in whatever their families consumed, though their needs were often given special consideration. Yes, they sometimes drank plain water, particularly when it came from trusted sources like the family well or a nearby spring that had proven reliable over time. However, more often than not, children received their daily fluids in the same gentle forms that adults preferred. Water was frequently incorporated into children's diets through cooking rather than served as a plain beverage. Porridge made from oats or barley, cooked slowly in water until soft and creamy, was a common breakfast for children. This approach ensured that any water used was thoroughly boiled, while also providing substantial nourishment to growing bodies. Soft breads soaked in mild broths or diluted alesh were another favorite way to ensure children received adequate fluids. These combinations were easy for small mouths to manage and provided both hydration and nutrition in forms that children found appealing. The bread would absorb the liquid, creating a soft, flavorful meal that was both filling and hydrating. During summer months, children might be given diluted fruit juices or herbal waters flavored with mint or other gentle herbs. These drinks were often sweetened with honey when available, making them special treats that children would anticipate eagerly. The preparation of these beverages often became a pleasant family activity, with children helping to gather herbs or crush fruits. The relationship between medieval people and water extended far beyond drinking into the realm of cleanliness and personal care. Bathing did happen in medieval times, though perhaps not with the daily frequency that modern life has accustomed us to expect. The approach to cleanliness was thoughtful and seasonal, adapted to the practical realities of heating and transporting large quantities of water. Most bathing occurred weekly or bi-weekly, often coordinated with other household activities that required heating water. Saturday evening baths were common in many households, preparing the family for Sunday worship and rest. The process was often communal and social, with family members sharing heated water and taking turns in wooden tubs that might be set up in the kitchen or main living area. Water was more frequently used for targeted washing, hands before meals, faces upon waking, and feet before sleep. These smaller ablutions required less water and could be accomplished more quickly with basins and pitchers that were standard equipment in most households. Clean water was precious, so it was used efficiently and purposefully. Public bathhouses existed in many medieval cities, offering communal bathing experiences that were both social and practical. These establishments provided access to heated water and proper bathing facilities for people whose homes couldn't accommodate full baths. The bathhouses were often lively, friendly places where neighbors would gather to relax and catch up on local news. Laundry represented another significant use of water in medieval households. Washing clothes was typically a major undertaking that occurred monthly or seasonally, requiring large quantities of water to be heated and carried. Rivers and streams were often used for this purpose, with families gathering at designated washing areas to scrub their linens and garments clean. You grab one corner of the chest, feeling the smooth, polished wood under your hands. On Edmund's count, you all lift together. The chest is incredibly heavy, heavy enough that you can feel your muscles straining immediately. You take small, careful steps, moving slowly across the room, trying not to bump into anything or drop your corner. The chest makes it to its new position by the window without incident, and you set it down carefully, breathing hard from the effort. Your lower back is already protesting from the awkward lifting position, and you know you'll feel it even more tomorrow. Good work, Edmund says, wiping sweat from his forehead. Now we need to move these chairs to make room for the new table that's being delivered tomorrow. More furniture moving, more careful lifting and positioning, more making sure nothing gets scratched or damaged or placed in the wrong spot. It's not difficult work, exactly, but it's physically demanding and requires constant attention to detail. By the time you finish rearranging the solar, your back is aching, your hands are sore, and you're ready for a break. But there's no time for breaks. There's never time for breaks. Thomas needs help in the stables, Edmund says. Something about mucking out the stalls and getting fresh straw laid down. And after that, Margaret will probably need help with the midday meal preparation. So you head to the stables, where Thomas is indeed mucking out stalls, removing dirty straw soiled with horse manure and urine, and replacing it with fresh, clean straw. It's smelly work, but someone has to do it, and that someone is usually the servants. Thomas hands you a pitchfork and points to a stall occupied by a large brown mare. Start with that one, he says. She's gentle enough, but mind her back feet. She can kick if she's startled. You lead the mare out of her stall and tie her to a post in the stable yard, then return with your pitchfork to start cleaning. The dirty straw is heavy and wet and smells exactly as bad as you'd expect. You fork it into a wheelbarrow, trying not to breathe through your nose too much. The work is repetitive and unglamorous. Fork up the dirty straw, dump it in the wheelbarrow. Fork up more dirty straw, dump it in the wheelbarrow. When the wheelbarrow is full, you push it out to the midden heap behind the stables and dump it there, then return for another load. Each stall takes maybe half an hour to clean completely, and there are 12 stalls in the stable. By the time you finish the last one, your clothes smell like horse manure, your back is aching from all the bending and lifting, and your hands are blistered from gripping the wooden pitchfork handle. But the stables are clean and fresh, with new straw laid down in each stall, and the horses seem content as they're led back to their clean homes. It's honest work, necessary work, and seeing the results makes the effort feel worthwhile. Good job, Thomas says, clapping you on the shoulder. The horses appreciate clean quarters, even if they can't say so. Now you'd better get back to the kitchen. I heard Margaret calling for extra hands with the meal preparation. So back to the kitchen you go, where Margaret is indeed in the middle of preparing the midday meal for the entire household. The kitchen is a scene of controlled chaos, pots bubbling over the fire, servants chopping vegetables, bread being sliced, and Margaret directing it all with the practiced efficiency of someone who's been doing this for decades. There you are, she says when she sees you. I need you to help with the turnips. They need to be peeled and chopped, and they need to be done properly. No thick peels, no uneven pieces. The cook will have my head if the vegetables aren't uniform. You settle down at a wooden table with a sharp knife and a pile of turnips that seems impossibly large. Peeling and chopping vegetables sounds simple, but doing it well, doing it quickly, and doing it uniformly requires skill and practice that you're still developing. Each turnip needs to be peeled carefully, removing the tough outer skin without wasting too much of the vegetable underneath. Then it needs to be chopped into even pieces that will cook at the same rate. Too big, and some pieces will be undercooked. Too small, and they'll turn to mush. Just right, and they'll add texture and flavor to the soup without calling attention to themselves. You work steadily, your knife moving in practiced motions. Peel, chop, peel, chop. The pile of prepared turnips grows slowly, while the pile of raw ones seems to shrink hardly at all. Your hand starts to cramp from gripping the knife, and you develop a small cut on your finger from a moment of inattention. Around you, other servants are doing similar work with other vegetables. Carrots, onions, leeks, whatever the kitchen garden has provided for today's meals. Everyone works quietly and efficiently, focused on their tasks and mindful of the time pressure, because there is time pressure. The midday meal needs to be ready at a specific time when the Lord and his family expect to eat. There's no flexibility in the schedule, no room for delays or mistakes. The meal will be served when it's supposed to be served, and everything needs to be ready. Finally, after what feels like hours, but is probably only 1 hour, your pile of turnips is completely peeled and chopped. Your hand is cramped, your back is sore from hunching over the table, and you have small cuts on 2 of your fingers from the sharp knife. But the job is done, and done well. Margaret inspects your work with a critical eye, then nods approvingly. Good. Add them to the pot there, and then help with carrying the bread to the great hall. The meal service starts in a few minutes, and so your morning of endless tasks continues. Each job leads to another job, which leads to another job, which leads to another job. There's no moment to sit down, no time to rest, no opportunity to do anything for yourself. This is life as a medieval servant. Work from before sunrise until after sunset, with brief breaks for meals and sleep, and then wake up tomorrow to do it all again. But don't worry, there's more to come. Much more. Because we're only just getting started on this very long, very tiring day in the life of a medieval servant. After hours of preparing food for others, you finally get to think about eating some yourself. But here's the thing about being a medieval servant. You eat last, you eat least, and you eat what's left over after everyone more important than you has had their fill. The midday meal service is a carefully orchestrated affair. You and the other servants carry platters of food from the kitchen to the great hall, where the Lord's family and any guests are seated at the high table on a raised platform. Below them, at long wooden tables, sit the household officials, the steward, the bailiff, and other people of middling importance. You move quietly around the edges of the great hall, refilling cups with ale, bringing fresh bread from the kitchen, clearing away empty platters, and replacing them with full ones. The conversations at the tables wash over you. Discussions of local politics, plans for the harvest, gossip about neighboring lords, but you're not really listening. You're focused on your tasks, on being invisible, on making sure everything runs smoothly without drawing attention to yourself. The Lord sits in an ornate wooden chair at the center of the high table, carving meat from a roasted joint with a sharp knife. The lady of the manor sits beside him, delicately picking at her food with her fingers in the refined manner expected of nobility. Their children, if they're old enough, sit nearby, learning proper table manners and the complex social rules of noble dining. The food they eat is elaborate and varied. Roasted meats, beef, pork, mutton, sometimes venison if the hunting has been good. Fish prepared in various ways, baked, boiled, fried in expensive oils. Vegetables cooked with herbs and spices that cost more than a servant's monthly wages. Bread made from fine white flour instead of the coarse brown flour that everyone else eats. Sweet dishes made with honey and imported fruits that most people will never taste. You watch them eat as you work, and your stomach growls quietly. The smells are wonderful: roasted meat, fresh bread, herbs and spices, but they're not for you. Not yet. Maybe not at all, depending on how much is left when the important people are finished. The dining process is slow and social. People don't just eat. They talk, they laugh, they conduct business, they negotiate marriages and land deals. Meals are as much about politics and social interaction as they are about nutrition, which means they last for hours while you stand and wait and serve and try not to think about how hungry you are.